Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Well, most of you know that I went to the annual Unity Convention 2 weeks ago. And when I got back, I tested positive for COVID, which is why I wasn't here last week. My symptoms were extremely mild, but I didn't want to infect you all, so I took the Sunday off. My prayers of healing go out to everyone who attended the convention. I wasn't alone in the, and there are lots of people who are still affected by this virus. So please continue to be safe, get your vaccinations and your boosters, and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. I wanted to talk about the convention this year. There were a few changes to the convention. All of the activities this year were on the grounds of Unity Village for the first time in I don't know when. Unity Village is near Lee's Summit in the southwest corner of the Kansas City metro area, and the convention usually takes place in a large hotel and convention center with only a few activities on the grounds of Unity Village. And there are many good reasons for this, that it's usually held elsewhere, primarily because of insufficient hotel accommodations on campus. Now, there is a marvelous hotel right there on campus, but it's too small for when we all get together. So most attendees stayed in one of 3 hotels, and the organizers provided a bus service, a shuttle bus, to take us back and forth to the village. The convention format changed this year because they didn't try to cram business meetings into the schedule, which was wonderful. This year the convention felt more like a reunion and a spiritual retreat. At one of the first events, 72 newly minted Unity leaders, and they received either their ordination or other credentials. There were workshops and sessions filled with fantastic speakers and music. Part of my experience included a nature meandering. The organizer called it a meandering instead of a walk because he thought that a nature walk set up too many expectations. A nature meandering seemed less goal-oriented. On Wednesday, June 19th, we celebrated Juneteenth, acknowledging the final enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing enslaved people in Texas 2 years after the rest of the nation knew about it. Now, some of you saw my Facebook post. It contained videos of the dancers and the drummers of the Juneteenth celebration. I participated in a Juneteenth choir. My good friend, Reverend Sandra Campbell, led a Black church experience. Reverend Campbell also led a conversation with actors portraying departed Black Unity leaders, giants in the New Thought movement, Reverends Johnny Coleman and Reverend Ruth Mosley. And it was really interesting that these actors really put on the part, and I loved it. I loved it. I was so pleased that the convention had come home to Unity Village. Now, I have attended the Unity Convention almost every year for over 30 years. It is a fabulous time to see old friends and make new ones. It's an opportunity to see new programs and materials and what Unity ministries are doing worldwide. But every year, I hear people saying, well, why can't we hold the convention at Unity Village? I want to go home to Unity Village. Unity ministers, teachers, students, and dignitaries and delegates from Unity Ministries worldwide want to see the village. People want the opportunity to come home and spend time on campus. Unity Village is a special place. People love it there. I love it there. And I wanted to share my love and of the Unity Village and some of its history with you today. The Unity movement began in the late 1800s, actually a little before then. It started in Charles and Myrtle Fillmore's living room. And after that, they had a church building, and they had publishing operations and offices at 9th and Tracy in downtown Kansas City. But the founders and many of the other early Unity people were vegetarians. And so they ran a vegetarian restaurant there at their offices at 9th and Tracy. But they began to have difficulty sourcing the fresh fruits and vegetables they needed for the restaurant. So Charles Fillmore decided, and some would say naively decided, that they needed a farm. So one Sunday, they got in the car and they drove out to the country. Charles stopped along a country road and he said, "My, this is a beautiful place." And the real estate agent said, "This property is absolutely worthless for a farm. There's too many gullies, too many rocks and trees. You'll never get a farm growing here." But Charles said, no, this is it. This is Unity. And the land didn't have much value to anybody else, so Charles was able to buy it for a song. They started with 58 acres, which eventually grew to over 1,500 acres. Unity Farm would eventually produce fruits and vegetables, including 7,500 apple trees, 400 peach trees, 12 acres of grapevines, cherry and plum trees, fields of oats, corn, wheat, strawberries, asparagus, and soybeans. Unity Farm also supported a poultry house containing 2,000 hens. They started with some local tenant farmers to work the land for them, but the first thing they needed was water. So they drilled for water, and they struck oil. They drilled for water again, and they struck oil again. And then they struck natural gas. And when they finally did find water, it was an artesian well. They never produced enough gas or oil for major production, but it did provide for all of their power needs. All oil and gas production stopped after World War II, but when I first went to Unity Village in 1988 or 89, I could still find some evidence of the oil fields. I think there is still, if you go there today, I haven't checked recently, but if you go there today, you can still find one capped oil well near the golf course. They also discovered this beautiful natural stone that they had, and which they quarried. They made all of the first buildings and these wonderful stone retaining walls out of this natural stone, which you can still see today. And as they quarried the stone, they didn't want to disturb the natural surroundings. So they developed a cave system. And to this day, if you're out on the nature trail, you can still find the openings to the caves. Now, they're all gated up. You can't get in there now. But they're large. And during the war, the government used those caves for storage. One of the Fillmore children, Rickard Fillmore, was an architect. And so he began designing and constructing the Unity Village grounds, the campus, the houses, and everything. The campus is in a beautiful Mediterranean style. The first building on campus was a combination water tower and office building, which they used for Silent Unity prayer ministry and other office things. The tower opened in 1929, and it is now on the National Register of Historic Places. The campus is a large quadrangle with fountains running down the center. And there is an award-winning rose garden that surround the fountains. When I first saw Unity Village in the late when I first saw Unity Village in the late 1980s, many buildings and facilities had kind of fallen into disrepair due to age and lack of maintenance. Still, since that time, it has been under almost constant maintenance and rejuvenation. They've been upgrading buildings all over the place. One of my ministers, Reverend Tom Lee, had a background in construction, and he was instrumental in remaking the fountain complex when it needed significant repairs. And spanning the fountains in the courtyard center is the Bridge of Faith. It connects the two different sides of campus. It was originally constructed in 1951, and then it was remade in 2004 during the fountain improvements. Now, I know that most of you have your eyes closed during meditation, but the little video that we show during the silence, those are images of the fountains at Unity Village. Two new campus features are the 12 Powers Garden that surround the tower, and a recently dedicated walking labyrinth. And not too far from the main campus, there is a new 50-room boutique hotel. And several of the original homes have been converted into Airbnbs. There's a 9-hole golf course and a marvelous nature trail. That's where I took the nature meandering. Unity Village is home of Unity Prayer Ministry, also known as Silent Unity, which offers telephone prayer support to callers 24 hours a day. My late wife, Reverend Tony, and I both worked for Silent Unity for several years while attending ministerial classes. For decades, the village trained Unity ministers and teachers, and for over 6 years, every year I would take my 2-week vacation and travel to Unity Village to pursue my licensed teacher certificate. After moving to the Kansas City area, I took as many ministerial education classes as possible, and I supported Tony as she completed her ministerial training. Unity Worldwide Ministries still trains and credentials Unity ministers and teachers, and now offers certificates in spiritual direction, youth ministry, spirit groups, and other topics. Now, these classes mostly have all moved online or in a mixed format, and these students no longer have to travel to Unity Village for all their training. Unity Village is still a spiritual retreat center, offering many inclusive spiritual events, workshops, and retreats throughout the year. At one time, Unity printing and publication was a big part of Unity Village. When I first started going there were still printing operations. But those operations were contracted out many years ago. And in many cases, the original purpose for a building no longer exists. So buildings are being repurposed. Some buildings undergo major renovation and improvement, like the renovation of the Activity Center, which is now underway. The village is changing, as must all things. But I and thousands of others will continue to call Unity Village home. And I sincerely hope, that all of you have the opportunity to go to Unity Village and make it a part of your spiritual journey. Thank you all, and God bless you all. I love that story about finding oil at Unity Village.